Between us stand two magnificent espresso machines, the Dalla Corte Studio and the Marzocco Linea Mini R, and both really have a lot to offer. But how do they compare directly? Which machine will suit you better? What are the strengths and what are the weaknesses? This is what this video is all about. Anyone who has a Dalla Corte Studio at home or a Marzocco Linea Mini R definitely has a very good espresso machine at home and doesn't have to hide from much. And yet, both machines are in the exact same price category, and we asked ourselves, what can we actually recommend to you? Who would truly benefit from this machine? Purely in terms of the technical performance, the user interface, and of course, how quickly and efficiently the machines heat up, making espresso. So who is best suited for what? That's why we want to do a little comparison today. So we're going to go through the individual attributes and just give you our opinion on them and also say, yeah, which of the two machines would be more likely to be in our home? I'm curious, we haven't discussed it yet. We'll do it in this video, Michel. We can say both are really good machines.
Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. You'll definitely have a blast with both machines. You can brew with both machines, but it may be a bit inefficient time-wise, possibly taking longer than you might typically expect. It doesn't take quite as long as with classic FEMA brew groups, and both of them bring a massive package of consistency, which definitely means that you can brew some truly excellent and rich espresso right here without any issues.
And yet I know, for example, which of the two machines I'll use for a catering event on Saturday and which one I won't. And that's what we're going to talk about today, Michael. Yes, absolutely. We're looking a bit at home use, but also, of course, which beverages can be brewed well on which machine and which ones can't. And yes, we do have a few different opinions on that, and we definitely want to highlight them. Michel, price-wise, we are somewhat similar with both, but we do have more to offer here, especially if we upgrade the machine to its ideal operational condition, ensuring it performs at its best.
Absolutely. So right here we are at ±4243 in this particular segment of the discussion.
Maybe some color panels and such? Exactly.
You can actually spend a bit more there if you want. With the Linea, we're already scratching the $5,000 limit, and we don't even have the scale included yet, which means additional costs. That means the Marzocco's volumetrics include a brew by weight option with your archaea, giving you better control and precision over your brew to ensure consistently great coffee. Their archaea is simply an archaea with Marzocco branding. You'll need to purchase this particular scale. You simply can't use it with the regular archaea. That means you'll be out another $400. That's really quite a significant number when you think about it.
You could save on the drip tray. They are custom fitted or adjusted to the scale and so on. But to perhaps briefly put that into context, Michel, you need a scale so that the machine automatically stops, because otherwise we don't have any volumetrics here. And we can perhaps briefly mention this right at the beginning as a strong distinguishing feature. While this machine has a well-functioning volumetric system, which is also commonly found in the Dalla Corte Gastro machines. This means if you have programmed a drink quantity here, it stops within 1 or 2 grams exactly in the cup. That means we are definitely on track. The scale tends to, if it's set up precisely after 2-3 shots, be a bit more accurate if you've got it properly calibrated. But that's kind of the different setup. And then, of course, we're already looking at a difference of 1,000 francs here. Nevertheless, we said it's the same price range, and it's definitely worth taking a comparative look. Shall we start briefly with some external facts? For instance, what specific components the machine has, perhaps the sizes, a bit of categorization, and so on.
With both machines, we're dealing with classic dual boilers. This means essentially more or less decoupled espresso boilers with steam boilers. We'll get to why more or less in a moment. The Studio has an espresso boiler of 0.5 liters, while the Linea has a really very, very small one of 0.7. Then the Linea has a steam boiler of 3.5 liters compared to the Studio's 1.5 liters. Now, the thing is, you have at the Studio the classic Dalla Corte system, which basically means an espresso boiler in the cold water area. That means the two boilers are decoupled. You can brew espresso consistently with just the espresso boiler, ensuring quality shots and temperature stability every time.
Exactly. So that means we can skip the steam boiler, and maybe that's also quite special. It's sitting right on top here. So this is the brew boiler. And I find it crazy that 500 milliliters can fit in there just right on top. And that's wonderful. It works. We'll talk about temperature in a moment. It's going to get hot.
Absolutely.
Super good. Here's a slightly different kind of story.
Exactly. We have a classic heat exchanger principle for the espresso boiler. That means it is heated in the back in the steam boiler, and then it is heated and used for the espresso boiler. In theory, you can turn off the steam boiler. In practice, though, the temperatures won't stay constant because there are too many variables at play. That's why I would really cut this option on the Linea Mini R.
Yes, I actually find that interesting. We always talk about dual boilers, and yet we are still using, I would say, a HX technology. Makes sense, of course, so you really have to think about it in comparison or in connection with the different upgrades. So here with this small 0.17 liter brew boiler, you definitely need the preheated water in order to achieve the optimal brewing temperature for better and more consistent brewing results. And yeah, that's the main idea. You turn both on at once and then you have performance. And speaking of performance, especially the massive steam boiler, we'll definitely talk more about that too. But here it's intended and streamlined for you to just make an espresso, then it's quickly ready for the next brew with minimal effort. And you can work without steam boiler with the temperature staying stable. Absolutely. Therefore, in this particular case, there's really no difference in temperature, whether the steam boiler is on or not. So we can clearly say in both cases we have the same performance.
Top performance, absolutely. We also have water tanks, but both machines can be connected to fixed water lines. That's why 2 rotary pumps are installed. Here in the studio, we have a water tank with over 4 liters, while the Linea has 2.5 liters, which is generally sufficient for everyday use. Absolutely sufficient. The drip tray on the Linea Mini, yes, we're already scratching the 1.5 liter mark, and it's truly incredibly huge compared to others.
That's actually like a little guinea pig bathrobe. Yes.
Absolutely. Great, I can't get that image out of my head either. Here, it would probably be for a hamster. Yes.
Hamster.
800 milliliters.
I believe 800 milliliters is still perfectly okay.
That's totally fine.
For me, there's a strong point of criticism about the Dalla Corte, the drip tray.
From distance to portafilter?
That's one point, but I'm mainly talking about this version. There's another version, but we don't have a sewage hose attachable. Well, you really have to think that through. It's not pre-planned.
It's not pre-planned, exactly. Do we need to improvise something now, or is there an additional drip tray or something?
Yeah, maybe if that's true, if it exists, especially to everyone who agrees. Dealers, please leave your comments below. Unfortunately, we weren't able to find any drain hole that fits. And you probably need to upgrade to the Aqua version for that. Once you do, you actually get a drip tray that includes a convenient wastewater drain, making management much easier.
Let's assume that. Read it again, please. Then let's transition from the inner to outer aspects to get a broader understanding of how these elements interact. I'd say in terms of performance, they are on par with each other. Absolutely. So it's super clean, super high quality. Of course, true to La Marzocco as well. Everything feels good and solid. I find this matte plastic very pleasant and smooth to the touch. I think the levers here are quite fitting too. They're all of a piece. They could be a bit more solid, but that's something that can be debated and discussed. Otherwise, the craftsmanship and finish everywhere is really nice. It's definitely fun, absolutely enjoyable. Let's go over the specific spacing to the portafilter one more time. I'm genuinely really quite glad that we have a volumetric function on the studio because it gets very tight when using a scale and larger cups. With the La Marzocco, it's of course assumed that you're using a scale simply due to the volumetrics, and so you have a bit more distance. That's about a centimeter difference, and this slight variation significantly impacts the overall result. It would still be just enough here though. So in our example with our scales and our cups, that fit perfectly. I would say that with some slightly taller cups, it might get really tight in there.
So we can make it specific. So here we are at a distance from the drip. Area up to the drip tray is 8.1, and here we are at 9.5. So as you said, it's more than a centimeter. Yes, it depends a bit on the drinks you want to make. Tall cappuccino cups are rather problematic. Espresso cups with a scale are no issue. And we've also had machines with only 7.5, so we have to mention that too.
And then there's certainly one more thing to add externally about the weight. So plus minus, we're at 32 here and 27.5 here. That stays within bounds, but of course the depth, especially the width, the La Marzocco Linea is still a bit wider, but the depth really makes the difference. So we're talking about roughly 10 centimeter difference without the portafilter. If you have a Linea at home, you'll definitely need a 60 centimeter tabletop so that the portafilter doesn't stick out, because there are exactly 2 centimeters left. The La Marzocco with the portafilter has a depth of 58 centimeters.
Otherwise, a quick mention of storage space. So maybe from the perspective of being at home, on the go, or at a festival, you have around a third more available space for cups. That's really nice. Both will keep your cups warm. So even in cold weather conditions, you can still work very effectively and efficiently with both of them. But here again, there's just clearly more workspace on the La Marzocco. Michel, should we move on to the portafilters, which are different from each other? So one should be in the making. We have here really characteristic. So we have, neither of these are single portafilters.
Absolutely. So I think that espresso machines probably can't be all that different.
So there are these two aspects. First, the diameter, and second, the texture.
First, diameter. At Dalla Corte, we traditionally use a 54 millimeter diameter. That's, I would probably say, historically and conviction-wise conditioned. That's just the way it is. There's a retrofit kit, but it doesn't align with Dalla Corte's philosophy and is crucial to consider before making changes. The philosophy behind it is that with the smaller cake, which is a bit higher, the brewing process should be more consistent overall. An important tip for all Dalla Corte machines is to avoid overdosing, as too much coffee can cause channeling and uneven extraction, ultimately ruining your coffee experience. And I've been using around 17 to 17.5 grams with the classic 7, which are intended for 18 grams. You certainly have that less with 58 millimeters. On the other hand, with a 54 millimeter portafilter, it would really be possible to brew a consistently delicious espresso.
Yes, definitely.
And then, of course, we have a completely different construction method altogether. The only similarity between these two portafilters is that they are essentially brass and chrome plated, which gives them a certain durability and aesthetic appeal. At Dalla Corte, it's all about a firm belief in the essential principle of conductivity. Dalla Corte makes a significant point. They insert a stainless steel plate, a stainless steel film inside the portafilter, and thus managed to solve this issue of the chrome plating being stripped from the brass. This now only occurs at the outlets, but the conductivity and therefore also the
flexibility in temperature levels.
Absolutely.
So brass just absorbs temperature much faster than stainless steel, which is generally considered to be of higher quality, but brass simply absorbs temperature faster and releases it more quickly, which actually speaks for itself, especially now. So I'd say in a home context, basically for a machine, so you can warm up faster, get your espresso quicker. And at the same time, they want to prevent the erosion, so they decided to install this stainless steel plate. And here, they managed to solve the entire issue by using this plastic attachment, which was actually first introduced together with the micrub. That's the practical part, I'd say. You can fairly easily switch between a single and double portafilter or spout in the same portafilter and also have a bottomless one.
So for me, honestly, this would be a reason for me having, again, a La Marzocco at home again.
Yes.
Because I keep switching from double to bottomless. At home, I have stainless steel portafilters. It takes some time to lock them in and get them really hot. Especially from the bottomless to the double. From the double to the bottomless is just the sieve, I'd say more or less. Then I'll simply run a single shot through the machine and then...
I rarely use this thing here. Wait, is this the front? Is the spout in the front? No.
Snap in on the other side?
No, not at all.
A little wobble.
Is the dock in front?
No, he has to be able to temper it.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Sure, otherwise the La Marzocco portafilter's construction, also chrome-plated brass, which is surrounded by it and simply with the plastic runs out. Classic 58 millimeter diameter, which should definitely still be mentioned, especially in comparison contexts, is fundamentally are many things on the market that are simply built for 58 millimeter. Grinder cups, WDT leveling, and various other tools are very often only available in 58. And that makes everyday life, I would say, using supplementary tools a bit more difficult, but it's not impossible.
Exactly. Also, the temper that comes with the Dalla Corte is something we would likely upgrade to a higher quality one, Michel. Yeah, we have a slightly larger gap. Look, one of us can't seem to get the thing in down here, while the other one isn't able to clamp the portafilter properly.
Exactly.
If we now look, only supplied temperatures at both. Do we have them still around here? Yes, if we now say only use the supplied temper mix for both, then the Dalla Corte has a slightly larger distance to the edge. So if we go inside, how much is at the edge?
We're talking about 0.9 millimeters and we're discussing about 0.8 millimeters as well. Now that probably sounds insignificant or even trivial to most of you guys, but please pay attention. We're talking about 1/10 of a millimeter. If you brew coffee at home, you'll notice even that small change makes a difference in taste and aroma. These adjustments might seem trivial, but they're essential for achieving the perfect cup of coffee. So for everyone who might have bought a portafilter classic E61 brew group, let's say let's take a rocket as an example, and you add this standard temper to it as well. It has a distance ranging from 0.85 to 0.9, which is perfectly fine and generally acceptable. When you buy a tamper that fits edge to edge, it looks different and makes brewing more consistent, ensuring each cup of coffee is of high quality. They're not bad at all. The fit is just fine. I just would have liked them maybe about 0.5 wider.
That's how it looks. Now, we've already talked about temper. That's already part of the accessories. You wouldn't need to include one. So how are the accessories overall, Michel?
Well, I would just say this particular studio is truly setting a high standard, especially in terms of the remarkable quality provided. You'll get a few more cups, you'll get a nice apron that's really high quality. It's really awesome. And you get a single portafilter, a double portafilter, and there are lots of baskets included. It's such a very full package, even a tamper mat from DC Pro Design, no idea what it is exactly, that just fits the portafilter perfectly into place. That's quite some equipment which you're generally not used to. The fact that a knockbox isn't included is a real miracle. And of course, with La Marzocco, what comes with it is also very high quality fun. Everything is wonderful. But I would now say, according to the Swiss grading system, it would be a 5 to 5.5, and here it would be a 6.
Yes, or even a 6 and a 5. I mean, both are also bringing along a milk can as well, don't they? But it's quite a snazzy motor. Just look at the price tag and you'll see why it's appealing.
This is real.
And yet for both, it's really more than what's necessary.
Absolutely. I would still want the La Marzocco to include the scale, then it would be perfect. Let's move on to an interesting topic, specifically focusing on the heating time and power consumption aspects of this equipment. Ben, you have a catering gig, you're running late, there was traffic, you want to make coffee as quickly as possible, you have both machines with you.
Then I'll go ahead and take both machines. In principle, there's really not much noticeable difference in wake-up time between them. We're at 10 minutes here and at 12 minutes over there. That's why. And since I already have both, I'll just take both, because then I have a bit more flexibility and one can also drop out. Otherwise, if I were to say they don't have much power, I'd go with the Dalla Corte, as it works well under low power and ensures stable performance. Well, on the one hand, I could also run it without the steam boiler if I didn't need steam right now, if I just wanted to make espresso, and then I'm already really deeply into understanding how it works and all its functionalities. So in terms of energy consumption, I really am competitive with some of the other thermal blocks. And that's really awesome. That means this little 0.5 milliliter boiler up front actually draws so little energy that we can really get things done effectively. And here, as we mentioned, we can't just skip this one. Right, we usually want to steam as well, but then we find ourselves deep into the classic high joule boiler range, consuming over 0.36 kilowatt hours of energy. Yes, that's quite a statement. Sure, back here you have a 3.5 liter boiler. So, in terms of energy. Efficiency, the Dalla Corte consistently wins in every version. Without the steam boiler, or even with it on, we're still around 0.26 in a reasonable range. This shows how incredibly efficient the design is.
One circle level.
Exactly. In terms of heating time, the La Marzocco is more efficient, making it a top choice for those who need a faster startup. But with 2 minutes, more okay, and then we have to say, after 10 minutes, or rather 12 minutes, which are great values for dual boilers, we're at 92 degrees with the first shot. That's fun. And additionally, portafilters, everything is then fully warm, so this is really top notch. Michel, we'll talk about the espresso in a moment. We've mentioned that both make excellent espresso. And of course, it's also because both provide us with a consistently very good temperature. We truly don't need to discuss that at all. You see, in all the different variations, we have consistently good performance here. And we've expanded our protocol a little bit to also get an even better sense of how the first shot is, because that's important for many of you. So if we say after 10 or 12 minutes the machine is hot, we're curious what happens next. How consistent is the temperature of the very first shot? And here's what we can say about this. If we now look at what the minimum value is and what the maximum value is, with the Dalla Corte, we're really at less than 1 degree. So from the 5th second onward, we said, let's start observing it until we reach the 25th second. How does it vary during that entire period? 0.8, so 0.82. This is really quite fantastic. With the Dalla Corte machine, and here again, first shot taken. So we have a difference between the minimum point after 5 seconds and the maximum of 1.7 degrees. It's not as good as over there, but it's okay. We're around 91.5 to 93 degrees, which should be acceptable for our needs and purposes, especially given the circumstances we're currently facing. So we're in the range.
All good, all tasty, no problem at all. This is our very first shot. Now, of course, if we're moving into the catering area, this would be the first shot where I simply check the grind, how it is set up. I probably would never even drink that.
Exactly, but that's the question, especially for when you're at home. So for home, the first shot is a bit more precise. And then, of course, we can also discuss the consistency of how it develops. Yes.
The Dalla Corte is one step ahead again, but really just a tiny little step forward in this context. We are currently sitting at 0.51 standard deviations for the coffee maker protocol with a total of 5 brews, each with a gap of 1 minute. La Marzocco is slightly higher, coming in at a bit more than 0.7 standard deviations.
Yes, but it's one of the top 5 machines. Exactly.
Everything's great. So you'll most likely be taking regular and quite frequent shots right at home. So you have to clearly say that about both machines. It's really a lot of fun. And now I have another question coming up. I have a catering service and I'm putting it out there. Which one is better then?
We're discussing 14 references. We checked the lowest and highest points across all 14 references, starting from second 5. And here we are at 268. Here we are at 324. So they are super similar.
But you have to put that into context again. So that's 14 references, 20 data points per reference. So we are talking about 280 measurement points. And in these 280 measurement points, we don't even have a 3-degree difference. That's really, yeah.
That's phenomenal. And especially the frequency goes up to 35 seconds later. So we are then at 35 seconds that we're really going to blast out there. And so really, with everyone involved,
no matter where you are or how many guests you have, you can serve everyone with consistently good espresso from both machines. It's fun and convenient.
Yes, how does it feel?
I would prefer not to touch it. It's really hot.
Yours is hot, mine is easy peasy. The tip gets hot too. That's this new plastic.
I have a rubber, but it's also quite hot. So that's something to be clear about. I simply believe, yeah, studio. My goodness, please just make a double-walled steam wand. I would have really wished for that here. It's a bit faster at steaming, exactly 3 seconds quicker in our coffee maker test protocol. That doesn't change the world much. Both pack a punch and are fun to foam with, adding enjoyment to the coffee making process. It's really both an absolute benchmark in our test series. So anything with a heating time of 20 to 23 seconds, absolutely top. Can't say anything against it.
Can't say much about that, but what can be said, especially not just for you, is that the whole steam plant is hot. My tip is getting a bit warm right now. Where is it?
Yes.
But that's it then.
Yes, and La Marzocco also thought about something interesting related to the dirt just beading off from the tip. I think it's way easier to clean. It's really fun. And here is just the steam wand from Dalla Corte from 15 years ago.
Yes, that's exactly how it feels. So, right, they are, of course, just as involved in the gastronomy. They are really all over it. Yes, it simply gets very hot, and indeed, especially if you happen to accidentally touch it or, yeah, I mean, otherwise the steam itself, it just goes straight into the milk as intended. That's not exactly a big deal. I mean, I also enjoy frothing hot chocolate with kids sometimes, but when it comes to using a steam wand, that's just a bummer. I wouldn't recommend it at all. And here, it's really not a significant problem.
I used to always say in my early days at the cafe, the best machine for steaming is the Dalla Corte. I always thought that, and I thought the Evo 2 was an old gastro machine, but then also the subsequent models that came after it. At our academy, we also have an XT here. I really, really enjoy steaming with Dalla Corte. There's another espresso machine I now prefer for frothing, but Dalla Corte remains my second choice. It's still excellent in my opinion. I think it's really nice for steaming.
Very nice. I also like to froth with the La Marzoccos. I get the feeling that sometimes they're a bit rougher in performance. Provide everything you need.
Absolutely. However, for instance, the pleasant frothing behavior on a linear gastro machine compared to a Dalla Corte, I can still notice a significant difference. I prefer to steam with a Dalla Corte, even though I had a La Marzocco at home for a long time, no discussion.
Dear Michel, there's one more thing we need to discuss, something that really differentiates the machines quite a bit. This is the control panel. Here's how you start a brew cycle, and then you have various advanced settings and additional options. How do I go about setting up all of these configuration things correctly? As we mentioned before, we basically have a classic lever mechanism here. We pull that back and then stop. If we add a few hundred francs or euros more, we might end up with a working and accurate scale. Then we can go ahead and start. The scale is positioned down here and the cups are placed on it. And when the right amount is in, the machine stops. But in any case, we have to put the lever back. Over there, we also see a lever which we need to pull down to proceed.
Exactly. We have a manual position where water flows continuously without interruption.
2 different configurable control modes.
2 programmable settings. I set the second as the rinse button. During brewing or using the Marzocco, I return the lever to its original position, ensuring proper functioning and consistent results. And if I were brewing now, I would go all the way down. For a catering routine, I would find it much easier so I don't have to concentrate when brewing, but only when I rinse. Then I just turn it all the way down and then it stops after it's now set somewhere around 44 grams, 43 grams in the cup. Wonderful, it's consistently working well.
You need to go back up.
I need to head up.
So there's really no mechanism that effectively lifts it up to a higher level. Honestly, I wonder why not, to be fair. If it stops anyway, why doesn't a button also accomplish that? Personally, I think it's nicer for the smooth flow. So it will be like this. She stops when you want to make the next shot. Then you'll probably rinse briefly and then move the lever and return to the starting position and then pull down again. It's not that significant, but it's just something. A button might be less aesthetically pleasing to look at, but it would definitely serve the function perfectly well, ensuring everything operates smoothly and efficiently. Made it a bit smoother, in my opinion. Absolutely. Smoothness in terms of setup otherwise. Where are you during our discussion, and with which machine do you feel more comfortable?
It depends on the task. For example, setting an automatic on and off time is much easier through an app than using a small display, as the app streamlines the process significantly. I don't really want to have to sign up for an app. Ideally, I just want to start the app and connect to the machine without entering any login, password, or anything, which can be quite cumbersome and time-consuming for the user. I find the app from Marzocco much better in terms of overall user-friendliness. I find it quite cheeky to just say you don't need an app here. It's all managed via the display and it's easily accessible, I'd say. No problem at all, it's not rocket science, but still setting a quick on and off time on the phone is of course a bit smarter and more efficient, not to mention it saves time and effort for the user.
Yes, so you can easily say it will definitely work like this forever, even without having a phone with you and without needing to think about any complex configuration stuff at all. It simply functions flawlessly on its own. Plus, you'll never need to log in or register like you do here, where signing up and going through the tedious process takes a lot of your valuable time and energy. So when you say, I'm really not in the mood to leave my email address somewhere again, then you are definitely at home on this page. If you want to set up a bit more, perhaps simpler, yet more extensive things, then rather choose to do it over here on this platform instead. But otherwise, you can set up very similar things. So it's not like you have a vastly greater range of basic settings available here. Both machines are equipped with a pre-infusion function, yes. So what exactly is the difference there?
So with the Dalla Corte, we have a very good and quite efficient pre-infusion function. This means that we can work with a controlled water pressure that slowly saturates our puck thoroughly before generating the full pressure from the pump. The big disadvantage here is that it only works with flow pressure if the machine is connected to a fixed water supply system. Otherwise, there's no pre-brewing function here. With the Marzocco Mini R, you get that plus the self-interpreted pre-brewing cycle, enhancing the coffee experience and bringing out the best flavors in every cup. I'll mention the preliminary check function, which limits itself to a maximum of 9 seconds. That means, however, you put the pump on full power. Now, one could debate how sensible that is or not. Take a break for around 3, 4, 5 seconds for cake saturation, pause for 8, 9 seconds, and then apply 9 bars again. That's also possible without a permanent water connection.
Exactly. Assessment?
I would leave it without judgment for now because I actually think the option, no, not just actually because I find the delivery function with a fixed water connection much more sensible. I don't find the additional submission feature very useful, so I wouldn't award it any points in this context as it doesn't contribute much.
We will still need to comment on this as we haven't concluded our testing phase yet. We need to test a bit more, but we can confidently say that we haven't really found the right solution with the add water, take a moment, then continue adding more water, or let it flow freely. Test function of the Marzocco Linea Mini R. That's exactly why we'll skip this part and leave it as it currently is, and conclude with a brief summary. For home use, if you just want to make espresso and occasionally a cappuccino, which is better? Which machine wins the race for you, Misha?
So if I want to make an espresso every now and then a cappuccino, I don't know if I necessarily need to spend an extra 4,000 to 5,000 francs. However, hey, I find it quite difficult. If I could simply choose now and get the scale as well, then I would probably go for the La Marzocco for home.
At home, I'd pick the Dalla Corte because I can choose precisely what I want. For instance, today I just want an espresso, so I make only that and nothing else. And when I have visitors over who also want a cappuccino or something similar, I just turn on the steam boiler as well, and then I simply use just 1/3 of the electricity only.
I've now factored out the power consumption.
Yeah, but at home, I'm interested in that. I'd rather charge my electric car then. If I actually liked it at home, for example, but also if I were an Americano fan, if that were my primary deciding criterion, then naturally, of course, I would definitely choose the La Marzocco without hesitation. Yes, it's a reason.
No hot water here, so the studio isn't an option if you want to make Americanos regularly, which means we'll need to find another solution that suits our needs better. I almost never do this at home. My guests, they have been trained by now that there's simply espresso, macchiato, and cappuccino. Or a doppio, but that rules out the studio. I just think the La Marzocco is a really beautiful machine and the precision with the scale is just awesome. In terms of meaningfulness, I'm totally with you.
There are also quite a few things you can explore at home when you carefully examine the overall workflow in detail. Then I find the workflow with the scale completely fine. But if I think about it, I'm on the go. And I really have to do this. Again, we're setting up this scenario. We really want to accelerate, and we might even be a small gastronomic business. Or then it turns out that I have another perspective, I must say. Yes.
And then, without a doubt, it is definitely and undeniably the studio for me.
And why?
Because I have a volumetric scan.
Yeah, but also workflow. I mean, again, if you really have a high frequency, there are 10 people in front of you, and you have to constantly move the scale back and forth every time. Look, if everything is properly balanced, maybe the scale won't calibrate because, I don't know, a train passes by in front or something like that. Then personally, I am not satisfied at all, and using a scale just isn't enjoyable for me in any way whatsoever, which is why I find the whole process quite frustrating and not worth my time, honestly. At frequency, I must say.
I would now, in the small gastro catering area, definitely opt for the Aqua because, as discussed at breakfast, it offers the best balance of quality and functionality. I would opt for Americano-level catering, considering its versatility, and wouldn't take a second mill along with me. Ben then says, if I already have a Dalla Corte with a 54mm, I'll get another grinder as the Café Crème is better. We can argue about that. But then I would take the Aqua because although I no longer have a water tank, it has the fixed water connection and a pump that has enough power for both. You can just pull out of the canister, no problem.
We could make a competition out of this. Maybe the two manufacturers are watching and want to sponsor us, and then we'll compete.
Who makes the better Café Crème?
Yeah, or perhaps we could have more drinks of equally good quality at a festival or similar event, whatever.
We could do that.
That's another story. Dear folks, those are some of our basic thoughts on the Dalla Corte Studio, as well as our basic thoughts on the La Marzocco Linea Mini R. We've already mentioned at the beginning, both are amazing machines that really bring immense joy. Both machines will be with us for a longer time, so if you feel like getting to know them, just drop by briefly. You can do it here in Basel, we'd be very happy. Just drop by. There are also courses in Dinslaken, Germany, with other exciting espresso machines you can test. That's actually always something nice about the courses. You generally get to know a variety of machines. On the one hand, it's about our machines, and also the machines that home barista participants bring along. That's why we warmly invite you to drop by. We would be very happy. Furthermore, we'd love it if you could like this video and leave a comment sharing your thoughts, how your experiences are, whether we might have forgotten something, maybe some important criteria as well. For example, we deliberately left out the topic of boilers. What do you think about the topic of boilers? Does a copper boiler make more sense, or does a stainless steel boiler make more sense? That's an interesting question that we want to discuss in another video. We believe the effect isn't quite as crucial. That's why we've outsourced it a bit, but maybe you see it completely differently. We truly thank you, say our goodbyes, take care, and see you soon.